Alrighty team, so it's time to set up for December, and we're going to do things a little bit differently today. So rather than a time-lapsed type thing, we're going to be a little bit more real-time with it, just because I kind of want to explain how to set up what I'm setting up, and I figured it'd be a little bit easier in real time compared to trying to do a time-lapse with a voiceover. As we go through though, I would love your feedback, so let me know in the comments below. Today we're working in my Archer & Olive B6 size notebook, so if you're using an A5 or any other size, you're probably going to have to tweak things so that it actually works for your journal. But the theme we're going with here is going to be a hybrid of Christmas Village and Advent calendars. Every month my patrons vote on what they want my theme to be, and this month was a tie, so we're going to be doing both. We're going to start with the Christmas Village decoration first because that's probably the easiest part. Because for that, I'm going to be using this washi tape from the washi tape shop. This came as part of a set with a bunch of other really cute designs, and the blue and red ones in particular are the ones I'm going to be using for our setup today. So that'll be this one with mainly the little houses and the present kind of things, and this one which has a couple of house designs, but also just like a little Christmas critters, which I just think are very cute. We're going to start by putting some of those houses along the bottom here. You might have been able to see I've very lightly pencil sketched out where I want them to be so that I could plan in what I want the rest of the page to look like. Just to make sure I have enough room for everything, I know the spacing and dimensions, that kind of stuff. I'm just going to place them down lightly to start, just so that then I can kind of rearrange them without having to try and really pull them up off the page. So we'll just chuck that down at the bottom, and we'll do this one too. Ugh. Sticker ASMR. I'm not really a fan of ASMR, if I'm honest, but I know some people like it. There we go. And let's see, do we want that one or the brown one? Probably the blue one, because it's a little bit thinner. And with the other two that we've got here already, the brown one not going to fit. So we can put the blue one here, but then we'll put the brown one next to it so that we have a little bit of kind of variation of color. I might need to do something about this because those ones are both quite red. And I like to have some differences between the neighboring houses, otherwise they're all looking the same. It looks like Toy Town. While the tea kettle is technically a house, I don't really want to put that one in. And then we're back to the same designs again. So we're going to grab the other tape because this one also has some houses and we can use those as well. Now, I didn't want the two reds next to each other, so I might pull this red up. And I'll put him here because I kind of like the idea of the tree one being the one in the middle. And I know that one is red, but I think with the framing of the blue, I can kind of make my peace with it. You know, I say that, but technically the other one had a framing of blue too. It was just a little less blue. So, nice saturated blue house here. And then we can put this guy over on the other side. Now, of course, because I'm using the B6, I can only fit 3 of these houses across, but if you're using a bigger size, you might be able to fit more. You might want to chuck in a Christmas tree or something else. I kind of like the idea of the little houses at the bottom though. I think because now this house is a little bit thinner, I can play around with the placement of that. So push it into the corner a little bit more, and then possibly bring our brown house over here so that then I don't have to have red and red next to each other. I could kind of like swap this one and that one and just do a kind of a couple swaps. While I'm jimmying these little stickers around, just a reminder, you can get this washi tape set from the washi tape shop. And if you use my code JASHII10, you can save yourself 10%, which is awesome. That set, and of course any other pieces of equipment we use in today's setup, can be found linked in the description box below. The houses are looking so super cute. Now, you'll notice that I didn't really stick this corner down, and that's because I kind of want to trim away this confetti, because while it is very cute, it kind of looks a little bit out of place compared to the other houses. So for this, we're just going to take my craft knife and carefully cut away those kind of like Christmas bauble-y bits. Some of them obviously overlap onto the house, so I'll be leaving those ones on, like this little blue guy and the little red star at the bottom. But the rest of them, I'm gonna just very carefully trim them away, and then pull that up. Left a little bit behind, so I'm gonna have to go grab that part. While using a craft knife, do of course make sure that you are being careful. We just want to cut the washi tape. We don't want to cut anything we shouldn't. Yay, cuteness! Alright, the next part I'm going to work on are going to be the banners at the top. So on each of the pages of the layout, to tie everything together, I'm going to want to use the same craft paper banner, or kind of like a header for the page. To do this, I'm going to be using this craft paper tape from Stationery Pal. As you can see, it has a little dotted grid, not a dot grid, but a grid made out of dotted lines. And the nice part is it's got a sticky back, so I don't have to, put adhesive down or anything like that. I have already measured those up and trimmed them so that they fit at the top of the page, going just along the whole way. And I've got one for each side, so sticking those down. To make sure I get those tape strips nice and super straight, I just line them up with the dot grid, so making sure with that very first row of dots, the tape just covers those dots. Those are looking cute, we're going to label them in a bit. I'm going to do the rest of my paperwork first. Not paperwork in terms of admin, but working with paper. So as mentioned, this is a Christmas village theme, but it is also an advent calendar theme. And the nice part about advent calendars is that they've got the little doors that you can open and there's stuff underneath. So that's what we're going to be doing on this page. You can see I've sketched out a space for 5 doors, and I've also described what color I want them to be. Might be a little bit hard to see because they're in pencil, but we're going to have a blue door here, a red one, another blue, another red, and then a craft, because those are the colors that I'm using through the entire setup, so I thought they'd tie together nicely. For all of the doors, I'm using papers from Archer and Olive, and while you can get the craft and the red still, so the red comes from the rainbow pad, and the craft comes from either the craft or the Neapolitan, this blue one in particular came from a subscription box, so it's not available for purchase, but you could substitute in another color, or just go with the craft and red. This red piece isn't going to cut it though, I am going to need a bigger one, but this is just an offcut from a piece of notepad paper that I had earlier. Always saving our scraps. So here's that rainbow notepad. You can see we've got a good variation of colors here, so a red, a bright yellow, green. There's also a blue here, but as you can see, that blue is distinctly different to the one that I want to use, so not going to be using that blue, but it also has a purple. Not part of our color palette, but those are the options. We have our larger piece of red though, which is going to fit for that box there. We've got our larger piece of blue, which will be fine for that box and probably also that box too. And the craft piece we have is going to be fine for the piece that I've measured up. Shuffling these to the side just to have a look at our boxes. So you can see hopefully that I have sketched in with pencil just where I want those boxes to go, but when it comes to cutting my paper I need to cut it bigger than these spaced out sections because I'm going to need to have a little bit extra to fold under the door so that I can actually attach the door to the page. And to put those in, I really first need to figure out whether I want the door to open from the top or from the side. I like the idea of having some variation with these, so some of them I'm going to want to open from the side, some of them I want to open from the top. So I think for this blue one here, we're going to make that open from the top. So we're going to need an additional row of grid boxes there. For the ones down the bottom though, I'm thinking most of them I'd probably like from the side. Like the blue one here I think would be nice to open out that way. So I'm going to need an extra column of dots, or rather an extra column of spaces. The red one I could open from the top, but that's going to be a very long box, so I'll probably open it from the side as well. And I think I'm going to want to open it from the same side as the blue one. And this guy here, we could open that in the opposite direction from the side. Or maybe we'll do the red one from the side and we'll do the craft one from the top. Just so that we don't only have one opening from the top. So we'll have that one, this one, and this one. So planning out how you want them to open, pretty important to do before you start cutting your paper, just so that you make sure we can cut that little bit extra. For our blue box here, this one is going to be 5 centimeters across, plus the extra half, because we're opening from the side, so 5.5 by 10. So when we take our piece of paper, we need to cut 5.5 across and 10 centimeters up, which I think will work well this way. Yeah, I think we're gonna do it vertically. That looks good. Effectively for each of the boxes, I'm just doing that same process. So measuring up the size that I'm going to need to cut, making sure to account for that little piece that we're gonna have to fold under, and then cutting it out of the dot grid notepad. I also made sure that as I was going through, I was saving any of my larger offcuts because I like to use them for extra decoration later where I just need a little piece of paper. Now as we have all of our little pieces cut out with their additional edge so that we can fold those under, it's time to actually fold those under. So starting with, let's say, our red one here because it's nice and easy, I've only cut an additional column or row of dots. So in this case, because it's opening from the side, I've cut an additional column. So what I want to do is I want to take that additional column and just fold the paper along the dotted edge. So along those dots there that mark out where the extra column is, I'm going to fold along here so that the paper tucks underneath my paper piece. What can be useful is to use a pair of scissors or very gently with your craft knife, I suppose, to add in a little scored line. This just helps to form that fold, but be careful when doing this, you do not want to cut through your paper. So we just gently fold that paper underneath, and then using your nails or whatever you want to use, just really making sure that that fold is very clean and crisp. It'll just help keep it flat in your journal rather than having all your doors sticking up all the time. But you can see now that that'll fit into the little box we drew out. Ah, so cute. And then we'll tape it down and it'll be gorgeous, but first we need to finish folding all the rest of these pieces. For each of those pieces of paper though, I am just scoring that line using my scissors, and because my nail got a little bit sore applying that much pressure to the paper to make the fold nice and crisp, I did instead decide to use my ruler. I know that they have specific tools for these, I just don't think that I have one. When it came to doing the blue paper, this is a little bit more difficult because it doesn't have a dot grid on the back of the page, so that one was a little bit more fiddly, but it's still the same general principle. There we go, so we now have all of our little pieces of paper that have their folded edge, so we can kind of start to think about sticking them down. But what I'm going to do before I stick them down is decorate the underside of the paper, because it's going to be a little bit easier to decorate the white paper before I have these things stuck in. The decoration isn't going to be huge though, I am just putting in some kind of alternating coloured lines as I like to do. And to do this, I'm going to be using the 990 Tombow Dual Brush Marker, which is just a nice pale brown colour that I think kind of matches with the tan that we've got from the craft paper elements. Turning the journal around, because to do horizontal lines I find it very much easier to drag my pen towards myself. To make these lines straight, or at least as straight as possible, all you need to do is hold the pen in your hand comfortably, and rather than twisting your wrist as you put the lines down, drag your entire arm towards yourself, making sure to hold that wrist in position so that it's not moving, because this movement is what gives you crooked lines. Now let's see if I can actually put them down straight. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep. So gently and carefully. I mean, this one here at the top doesn't really matter. It's going to be stuck with a piece of paper. We'll have a piece of paper stuck over the top of it. But, you know, for the sake of completeness, why not? Try to be careful not to go too far outside of your guidelines, just if you don't want the tan color to kind of poke through the underside of the paper, but I'm not too fussed. You'll see that I am just going over the top of my pencil. I'm not too fussed about that either. It'll erase pretty easily. If you are worried about that though, then just make sure that you erase things first. Getting straight lines with the Tombow like this does take some patience and some practice, but I encourage you to use the tips that I described before about holding your pen steady and not rotating your wrist. Also just rotating your journal to be in a direction that makes it easier for you to do those straight lines. So for me personally, that's doing them vertically or dragging the pen towards myself. So if I want to do horizontal lines in my journal, I need to rotate the journal so that they look vertical with the way that I'm drawing them. Hopefully that makes sense. Those are in, they're looking cute. We're just going to erase the pencil lines before we stick down any of the paper, because they will be harder to erase once we've stuck the paper down. Of course, it is easier to erase pencil if you don't go over the top of it with pen, but it's not noticeable enough that it really bothers me. Now it's time that we can stick in those little doors that we made. Now we just need to position them back where they belong. So you went here, I believe. You were here. Little red, bigger red, and our craft paper. Just making sure that we have those edges along the sides that we actually wanted them. For the sticking in process, we need to run tape along that little piece of the folded under paper on whichever side is going to touch the paper below it. So for our little blue piece here, it is this side is getting the tape, so that when we fold it under, that part will stick to the page. I'm going to be using a double-sided tape roller for this. This one's just a cheap one from Kmart, which is actually surprisingly good, but rolling that tape along the back and then sticking it to the paper. I'm just using a scrap piece of paper to protect my table as I put the double-sided tape down, just because the double-sided tape width is a little bit larger than the folded under piece for each of the little doors we've made. Just something to keep in mind while you're making yours. Again, I'm using the dot grid to help me line up those little advent doors nice and straight. I did realize while I was sticking the pieces of paper down that I accidentally cut this door a little bit too long, which is fine, we can trim it back. It's always better to have cut something too big than too small. We can fix too big. Fixing too small is a bit more challenging. But here we have all of the little advent calendar Dutch door type things, and they are super cute, but they are looking a little plain. So I am gonna go and do some decoration on them. For these, we're gonna be using a combination of my Pigma Micron pen, some acrylograph pens, and the Jelly Roll white gel pen. Of course, all linked in the description box below, but I just thought that these would tie nicely into our color palette and give us some variation on each of these little doors. We're gonna start with the white on the blue one, and I think for each of these little doors, I want to do a decorative border of some description. And for this first one, we're just gonna do a little kind of stitched line. So it's effectively just like little ants marching along the border here. A little dash, a little break, a little dash, a little break, all the way around. The Jelly Roll is my current favourite white pen. I really love the opacity of it. I know that some people complain that it can be a little streaky. I find that it's only ever streaky when I either try and go over the top of ink that I've just put down and it just picks it up rather than putting more down, or if I apply too much pressure. So I'm trying to make sure that I go over things only once or twice, and I'm also not using too much of a heavy hand. This one here is going to be for my Patreon tasks, so I'm just going to write that on the front. Patreon. That one looks pretty cute. Now, let's see, for this one, because I'm going to do both of them in white, I've decided. I just like the contrast of the blue and the white. I think it looks really good. For this one's border, I think what we're going to do is some little kind of like curved, kind of cut out corner pieces, and then just a straight line between them. There we go, beautiful. And the same on the other side, just taking our time with it to make sure that it looks as nice as possible, because this is my cover page, and I would like my cover page to look pretty cute. And like I said before, I like to turn my journal so that then when I do those straight lines, it's working in a direction that I find a little easier, which is towards myself rather than horizontally. This box is actually going to be for any kind of other tasks that I can think of. So we've got Patreon, videos, home tasks, personal tasks, and other stuff. But I do need a space to write out the title. So possibly I'll write December here, because other work tasks just sounds kind of lame, honestly. So I'll put the December header here. Again, I want to try and make it central. So let's see, DECEMBER. 8. So that means DECE needs to be on one side and MBER needs to be on the other if we're giving equal amount of space for each of the letters, which is typically what I find easier. So the halfway mark is essentially here, which means that we need to have E and M. There we go, not perfectly central, but good enough. I'm going to go with a simple monoline border for this one, just in the blue acrylograph. And this blue is by no means a perfect match for the paper. It's a little bit more subdued. I kind of thought that it possibly tied in with our houses a little bit, so we kind of have some variation in our blues, rather than trying to match it with the paper and then kind of like opposing the color of the houses. So we've got the little border here. This one was for home tasks. Again, not perfectly central, but I kind of like it. For our red ones, this is where we're going to use the black pen, and we're just going to do kind of like a little curly border here. Whee! Just with some kind of like little curled corners. Again, it doesn't need to be perfectly straight. Kind of adds to the charm of it a little bit, I think. Unlike the lines that we have underneath the doors. Those ones had to be straight. Just having a little earthquake, don't even worry about it. These ones were going to be for personal tasks. Personal. So yeah, that's going to fit the whole way across. And for the other red one, technically the only pen we have left over that we haven't used is the red pen, which isn't going to work here, so we're just going to go with the black again. And for this one, we're going to do kind of like, I don't even know how to describe it. I think it's like a candy stripe border. We're just going to do that one really simply. So chucking in some diagonal lines, and then we'll go and join every second one up. Again, it doesn't need to be perfect. We're adding to the charm, isn't that the idea? And just colouring every second gap in. And then continuing along the other side with the same direction of diagonal lines. This style of border can look really cute and really neat if you take your time with it. As said, I'm just kind of being a little loose with it here. I don't really mind. But I actually used this one in my last December setup where we had a gingerbread people theme. This corner's looking just a little bit odd, so I'm just going to go in with my acrylograph and kind of go over the top of it, effectively using it like it's whiteout for red paper. We do of course need a label for this one, and I think I'm going to try and keep the label of this one in particular the same level as that. I might do it big because I did this one larger and that one smaller, so maybe like reverse it for this one. That'll look cute. I'm going to use a slightly thicker micron for this though, so the 08 size, just to make it a little easier for myself. Y-O-U-T-U-B-E. Now the last little thing to do on our cover page here in particular is go and add in those headers. This one is my projects list, but then technically the whole thing has become my projects list because it spills over to the other page. So I'm not too sure what I want to do about that. I think I might actually just leave the header off and just have it as a blank brown piece of paper. The brown piece of paper will still tie nicely into the future pages that we have. So little advent calendar doors, very cute. Can store all of my tasks under those, but flipping over, carefully, there we go. While I have my notebook closed, those doors will kind of train themselves into place, but for now they're still a little bit more open. The next page we're going to set up is actually going to be some daily logs. Rather than setting up separate trackers in December, what I actually want to try my hand at is just using dailies and having everything on those dailies. So I'm starting off with those paper headers that we had from the last page, and I'm gonna lay them along the top here. Again, just using that dot grid to get them nice and straight. And then I'm also going to put one in the middle of the page, so effectively dividing each of the pages into halves. And this is because I'm going to have 4 days per page, so 1, 2, 3, 4. And these brown boxes are going to act as my headers for each of those days. Gonna label those with my black Muji gel pen in the 05 size, so Thursday 1st, and Friday the 2nd, Saturday the 3rd, and Sunday the 4th. We're going to have some more decoration on these pages, so bringing our stickers back over, and I think we're gonna have one per day, so maybe like here, here, there, and there. Kind of down the bottom, so I have space on top of those to put more of those little advent calendar doors. Again, with the placement of these, I kind of want to be mindful of what colors are going next to what colors, so I don't want to use like just blue stickers, for instance. And of course we're going to use some of those little houses because they are super cute. I also want some varying sizes with these, so they're not all the same size in terms of either the sticker or the little advent door. So you can see this one will be quite small, whereas this one will be a fair bit wider. I think I need a blue something down here. And I'll just put a little snowman down here because even though it is absolutely not snowy at Christmas in New Zealand, maybe it'll just remind me to stay cool. Now as we have those decorative elements, we're just going to sketch in where I'm going to put those little calendar doors because I want one above each of our little stickers here. And it's just going to be the same width as the sticker and whatever height is remaining above the sticker. So for instance, our tree one is a fair bit more narrow because the tree is more narrow than say the sleigh. Again, we need to decide how we want them to open, and I think I want both of the ones at the top to open at the top. So they're going to need to be a little bit taller than what we've drawn out. And the ones down here, I think I'm going to want them to open on the sides, and I want you to open on this side to that way. And I'm going to have you open in the same direction. Out to the left, out to the left. Because throughout my dailies I want a good combination of the different colours of paper and also the different styles of borders we've got, I'm going to start here with blue and go blue, red, craft, and then blue, red, craft, etc. I'm also going to alternate through the borders because we've got 5 different border designs. So I'll start on this one with the dashed, then on this one I'll do the curly corner, then on this one I'll do the kind of like postage candy stripe one, and then on this one I'll do those little cutaway corners. and then the first one on the next page we could have as a single line. That sounds like it would work. To do those little doors though, I'm doing exactly the same thing as we did on the cover page. So I'm measuring up how big I need the paper to be, including that extra row or column of dot grid spaces so that I can fold it under. Then scoring that with my scissors, folding it so that it has that little door shape, and then sticking it down with the double-sided tape. In this case, I'm not putting those Tombow lines underneath each of the doors, but I am going to be putting them to the side of the decoration for my daily task lists. While I was cutting pieces out, I did also decide to change the direction that some of the doors were going to open, just so that they could fit with the offcuts that I already had. There's no point in cutting up an entirely new piece of paper when you could just use one of the offcuts. Making sure to try and use our materials to completion where possible. Making each of the advent calendar doors for each of the days of the month can be a time-consuming and fiddly process, but I think they're looking really cute. And honestly, I don't mind spending a little bit of extra time for cuteness, and it also feels like a nice special thing for the last month of the year. The doors are in, it is time to label them. So, same idea again, we're going to be rotating through colors as well. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do this one in red, this one could be black, this one can be blue, and then this one could be white. Making sure to shake my acrylic graph. On each of the advent calendar boxes, I'm just writing the number for the day of the month. I know it's technically already in the header, but I thought it was a cute little label. And it kind of ties into the whole advent calendar thing, because usually when you get an advent calendar, little numbers for each of the days of the month are on the little door. The nice part about having a different number of borders to a different number of pen colors to a different number of paper colors means that throughout the month, as I alternate or cycle through all of them, I'm going to get some really good combinations. I will have to watch out for any time I'm trying to use blue on blue or red on red, because that's not really going to work. Might have to jimmy it up a little bit there. But all in all, I think it's coming together really well. Now as those little boxes are in, they are so cute. We're going to go and add some of those horizontal lines with the Tombow. So again, turning the notebook so it's a little easier for me. The thing I have to worry about here is that some of the doors might kind of get in my way as I put this down, so I might have to open or close them depending on what's going to be easiest as I put these in. In terms of where I'm actually putting the Tombow lines, I'm just coming up to the edge of the little calendar, just making sure that there's one column of dots, or rather one column of space between my brown lines and that little door. Each of the other daily logs are going to get set up in exactly the same way, but I'll be alternating the positioning of the stickers, so whichever of these daily boxes has stickers on the left, those will be on the right on the next spread. And of course rotating through the colours of the paper, the colours of the markers, and the style of the borders for each of them. For each of these little doors, I'm not actually going to write anything underneath them. So typically when you have an advent calendar, you'd open up a door for each day and there'd be something in there, but I'm doing this for myself, so it's not going to be a surprise. Instead, what I'm going to do is, as each day comes, I'm going to use that as a space to write down a little memory for the day. Kind of similar to this type of layout, so I'll have a box for each day of the month, but rather than being all together on one page, they're on the individual daily spaces. Flipping through what we have though, we have our little Christmas village and our little boxes for all of my projects. We then have the first space for dailies, so Thursday the 1st through to Sunday the 4th. And then after this we have another spread for each of the additional dailies with different stickers, different color combinations for the paper. Oh, look at the red on white, or rather white on red, so pretty. We've got all of those in there looking super, super cute. Of course, there aren't an even number of days in December, and there's certainly not a multiple of 4. So when it comes to the last couple of days, I've just got the 31st on a day by itself, or on a page by itself, with ample space to write out my end of year reflection or things that I want to do on that day, whatever I need it for. If you're looking for more December inspiration though, be sure to check out the playlist we have at the top. Or if you're more so looking for new journal inspiration, then the one at the bottom is where it's at. I'll see you over there.